So, hi. Okay, I have a universal truth. Does anyone want to hear a universal truth?
Yes.
For those of all of you that didn't put up your hands, just plug your ears in, because a lot of you didn't put up your hand. It all comes down to relationship. Almost as if how we're designed is actually meant to be flourishing in relationship. Now, in order to explain a bit more of what I mean by that, I actually have to back up a bit. See, several years ago, I was sitting there, and the thought occurred to me. I was like, oh, I'm going to die one day. And so I was like, okay, well, I had my existential cry, and then I thought, I'm still alive. I should probably do something with my life. So no word of a lie, I actually pursued some things that people said brought them joy. I pursued power. I pursued business, finance, all those sorts of things, just to be like, okay, or making sure I'm content, or always feeling comfortable. And none of those worked. And one day I was watching basketball, and one of the players, I was watching his face. He had this pain in his face. It wasn't like a physical pain. It was more like a psychological or an emotional pain. And nothing else in that moment to me mattered. All I wanted to do was take his pain away. So I thought, okay, maybe that's where I can find purpose in life, is meeting people in their pain. So pain, you think occupationally, just be a doctor. But I faint at the sight of blood, so I'd just be a terrible practitioner. So I took it a different route, and actually I studied human motivation in the brain and became a therapist, and working with people with their mental health concerns, as well as specializing in addictions and trauma. Now, my dad gave me some very wise advice when I was younger. He said, Steve, when you do a job, don't just do it, find a way to do that job better. So when I looked at the current success rates in counseling, I was kind of distressed. You know, we've come a long way and understand that mental illness is a real thing, so we now know that, and we now know that actually addictions just can't be treated by shaming an individual or is due just to low self-control. And there's plenty of other talks that go into details about that. But despite knowing that, our success rates in counseling still not that high. And like I said, we knew about mental illness a while ago, and actually we did increase services to that population, only to find 10 years later, once again, same rates of mental illness and addiction. So we're missing the mark. So I was really baffled by this, and I started talking to other professionals, like, what is this? And one of the answers they gave was, it was the resistance of the client that held back true health. I'm here to say we can't use that cop-out of an answer to hide our laziness as professionals, to not come up with new creative ways to meet people in their pain. You know? So as I was laying awake, and I just have a busy mind, like, my wife's lovely, she's just very patient with me on that topic. But I was laying awake, I'm like, oh, we're not doing as much as we can in counseling. And so I went downstairs, and I have this massive whiteboard at my house. And I just started writing down all my clients' symptoms, the people I was working with, from addictions, mental health, trauma, all those sorts of counseling, and all three really hold hands together. Now, I started writing down their symptoms and their lived experience. And when I sat back and I saw all of them there in front of me, I was like, oh, they have one thing in common. They all have one thing in common. Do you want to know what that thing is? Yeah. Each person I met with at some point in their life had a break in a relationship. And not just one relationship, there's actually three really specific relationships that I want to go over. The first was a break between humans and human. And that break in relationship came in the form of like abuse, so it could be physical, sexual, verbal, those sorts of things, or separation, divorce, death. And what had happened when that separation in relationship happened, it overwhelmed their brain past what it could cope with, resulting in some form of mental health difficulty or addiction. It's like, okay. Then the second key relationship I saw with all my clients on this whiteboard was a break between humans and nature. Now, there's such an abundance of research now on just how healthy it is if we're just present in nature. And what I was finding with a lot of people I was meeting with is they're replacing their time with nature with time with technology. And that was directly correlated to increased rates of irritability, ADHD, social anxiety, et cetera, and addictions. Now, the third relationship I saw a break in with all my clients was, and the psychology world's kicked and screamed against this one for a bit, but I think they can't ignore it anymore, was a break in relationship between humans and spirituality. I call them God, other people refer to that in some other means. Now, it's a very interesting thing, because when humans consider themselves at the peak of all creation, some really interesting thing happens. We actually start worshiping each other, but we don't call it worship. But we definitely follow the lives and envy of the rich, the famous, their successful neighbors, those sorts of things, or blindly watching reality TV. Or if we just don't explore our own spirituality, we actually lose a sense of purpose. And a lot of my clients were facing that. They're losing a sense of will or purpose. So, okay, I had this aha moment, and looking at this whiteboard, okay, a break in relationship, and if I'm a good counselor, I should fix those relationships. It makes sense, right? So I thought, okay, if I just need to repair them, I'll look at what I'm currently doing in practice, in my counseling practice. So when it came to human and human, I was doing one-on-one counseling with next to no involvement of the family or support network. For human and nature, I looked around in my beautiful white-walled counseling office with fake plants, fluorescent lights that buzz, computer screens, and Purell stations, and no animals, despite the abundance of research to say how healthy it is to have an animal in therapy. And when it came to spirituality, a lot of our counselors were like, oh, it makes me uncomfortable if I talk about spirituality, so I'll just kind of jump over that part of the assessment. Or we've got fear that if we bring up religion, we're going to get sued. So we're dropping the ball in all these areas. And on top of missing it on those 3 relationships, we actually did one other thing that was unfortunate. We relied on the quick fix of prescription medication instead of doing the long, hard work of sitting with people in their pain to see what's happening. Now, this no way is a prescription bashing. I want to be very clear. It's not a prescription bashing because it's definitely helped a lot of people in a lot of different scenarios. I'm merely saying I think we may have gone a bit too far in assuming we can treat all of mental illness and addiction with a pill. And maybe those symptoms of anxiety, depression, those sorts of things, maybe that's the body's way of saying something's unresolved. And maybe we should be listening to those symptoms. Okay, so, where's my line? Knowing all this, and my beautiful wife, she's there. I get off track. Yeah, so keep going. I should bring my wife up here, hey? No, sorry. But knowing all this, so I did have to make changes in how I do counseling. And so today's more about stories that empower. So I want to talk about a story that empowers. And I met with this wonderful woman when I started doing changing my counseling. And she came in, she's like, she came to see me for counseling for multiple drug addiction, as well as social anxiety and depression. I said, okay. And we started the assessment, and she was on 6 different medications. And I said, okay, explain that to me. She's like, the first pill I'm on is for my social anxiety. And I said, great. She said, but that caused me to feel nauseous. So I got another pill for my nausea. And I was like, okay. And then that one caused my depression to flare up. So I got another pill prescribed for my depression, which caused me to have sleep problems, yada, yada, so on and so forth. 6 different symptoms responded by 6 different pills. So I looked at her and I talked to her and her doctor, and I was like, I wonder if we could listen to those symptoms as maybe that's the body's way of saying something's unresolved instead of just suppressing them. She said, yep. And so the doctor said, yep. So we looked at the break in relationships. So when it came to human and human, sure enough, she had lots of abuse in her past, and we spent long, hard hours in counseling and tears and working through that. Human and nature, yep, replaced her time with nature with time with technology. So we started growing tomatoes, gardening tomatoes, and going for walks in nearby parks. And the combination of her hands in the soil, seeing tomatoes grow before her eyes, and the beautiful fresh air, it opened neural pathways that were designed to be flourishing. And when it came to humans and spirituality, she said that's not a topic she's really talked about that much. And so we just had a genuine, safe talk. And at the end of it, she decided on her own fruition to go join a church, where she gained a support network of 100 people, started volunteering, get a sense of giving back, and gained a sense of purpose. And as we were doing this, her symptoms were lowering, and her doctor started lowering the doses of prescriptions. Long story short, 1 year later, this wonderful woman was off all 6 medications. Her social anxiety was completely gone, her addictions dramatically reduced, and her depression almost null. Now, I'm not saying that these relationships are the end-all, be-all in treatment, because I think it's pretty scary when someone says, I found a cure-all. But I just want to be honest and report, this is what we know so far. This is what I know so far. This is the best way I can find to help people in pain. And in order to better illustrate that, I have one last secret to share. Has anyone here had to deal with someone that's arrogant or angry or just somebody you're working with like, oh, okay, here we go. Anyone here? Oh, okay, yeah, a couple of people have done that. Well, I have a secret to share about that, and actually this picture kind of sums it up. Look how powerful he is, hey? See, the secret is, I see every little kid as just this little superhero, and this superhero is saying, hey, am I good enough yet? They need to be fed power. So they ask their parent or attachment figure, am I good enough yet? Am I powerful? Am I worthy of love? And they don't just ask it outright, they actually do things. So they draw a picture and say, oh, is this worthy of the fridge? Or they report your grades. Am I smart enough yet? They twirl in a dress. Am I beautiful? Like, look how fast I am. All these things. And if they have good parents or attachment figures, they say, oh, you're great. You're worthy of love. You're wonderful. But what happens when that kid doesn't get that assurance or doesn't get reaffirmed that they are worthy of love or good enough? Well, here's the secret. I've learned that that little kid seeking approval doesn't leave us when we get adults. We just find new ways to seek that approval. We act, we dress, we talk just like others just to fit in. We brag about the success of our business or how much education we have. All of this is just a little kid in a big adult body saying, am I good enough yet? Am I good enough yet? We brag about look how many friends I have on Facebook. Look how many likes I got on this photo. Look how popular I am. Look how many people I've slept with. Am I good enough yet? Look at the initials after mine, MD, MA, PhD. Oh, look how much money I have. Look at the truck, look at the size. Look how many people I can beat up. Look at the size of my congregation, the size of my house. Am I good enough yet? And you see, an amazing thing happens when we actually start to look to those people as just a little kid saying, am I good enough yet? We stop putting distancing labels on them saying, that's angry, that's arrogant, that's all that thing. And we actually start seeing them with eyes of compassion. And that changes their whole response. And you actually want to have some real fun. The next presidential debate, just watch them and pretend them as little kids trying to prove that they're good enough. It's actually kind of fun to do. So, and another thing, maybe this inner desire in us to see if we actually are good enough, maybe that's further proof we actually should look to something higher than ourselves for that approval, non-judgmental answer saying, you bet, we're all worthy of love. And when we stop trying to control nature, religion, and each other, we actually open ourselves up to the beautiful power of relationship. Thank you.